6.
Welcome to Common Ground. I'm Ellen and my pronouns are she, her. Common Ground is an inclusive contemporary worship experience, encouraging everyone to take the next step in faith and in justice in Bloomington and beyond. We are eager to worship, act, and grow together. We encourage everyone to stand with us in body or in spirit as we go into our opening song.
In a world full of fear, where do we see glimmers of joy?
We see glimmers of joy in birthday candles and homemade cards. We see joy in the laughter of children and the delight of grandparents. We see joy in meals around the table and in the singing of Christmas songs.
You are right. Even in a fearful world, joy is all around us. Today we light the candle of joy as a reminder of this good news. May this flicker of light help us remember that even in a fearful world, joy is here, joy is real. We only have to look for it.
Thanks be to God for that good news. Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You are blessed. My name is Pastor Joseph Obwanda, go by the pronouns he, him. And it's a joy to have you on this cold morning And I want you to welcome each other, share your names and your pronouns, and affirm them that you are a blessing. Please, you're welcome to welcome each other. Thank you. Perfection? Yes. All right. Let's calm our hearts and our minds as we focus on sorry, pardon me. I missed something there. Yeah, I just want to highlight on focus for the day, and today we want to just highlight on behavioral covenant. And this focus basically what it means to live intentional in co-housing community and how does that reflect in our faith. That's what we basically reflect on in our behavioral covenant in how we engage with each other. So our common ground covenant highlights 5 critical things in so far as our relationships is concerned. Number 1, be respectful to each other, to listen to each other, and allow others to speak before we speak again, to be open to all people and to new ideas, to take risks, prioritize participation over perfection, and 5, to use I statements and speak from our own experiences. And that's basically to enrich our community as we continue to fellowship together and reflect our faith. Thank you.
Today's scripture comes from Acts 2, verses 42 through 47. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the community, to their shared meals, and to their prayers. A sense of awe overcame everyone. God performed many wonders and signs through the apostles. All the believers were united and shared everything. They would sell pieces of property and possessions and distribute the proceeds to everyone who needed them. Every day, they met together in the temple and ate in their homes. They shared food with gladness and simplicity. They praised God and demonstrated God's goodness to everyone. The Lord added daily to the community those who were being saved.
I'm Pastor Lisa. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and this morning I'm excited to introduce to you our speaker of the day, who is Alex Burch. Come on up, Alex. Yay! Alex is one of our own, and he and his family live in co-housing in Bloomington, and he's going to talk this morning about how his faith helped to shape that decision for them. But a little bit more about Alex. So Alex was born in Louisiana, grew up in West Virginia, and then he found his way to Bloomington over a decade ago. He and his wife, Kate, shout out Kate, yay, are here, and their daughter, Caroline, and they have a son, Calvin. and they've been attending FUMC for much of that time. And he's going to talk about how his values led to the experiment of living in Bloomington co-housing, which they moved into about 5 years ago. And so we're going to learn about that and how that reflects the book of Acts. And he's going to speak for a few minutes, and then Anne is going to serve as MC for any questions that you may have. So as he's sharing, be thinking about something that you might like to ask him to learn more. So welcome, Alex. We're glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Is this volume good? Good. Hi, everybody. I have a slide deck here to get you started with. Let's see. One moment. There we go. All right. So I'm talking about my experience living in an intentional community, Bloomington co-housing here in Bloomington, right by the South Side Y. And I want to start off by saying I'm talking about my personal experience and my values. This was a shared decision with my wife, Kate, but she has her own reasons for wanting to move there. And I feel good about the decision I made, which I'll talk more about, but I'm not trying to convince everyone that this is the right thing that you personally should do, or that you're a bad person if you haven't thought about doing this, but you know, it's a good thing for people to think about, so here I am. All right, I wanted to start off by just talking about tell you what I'm going to talk about. Here we go. So I'll tell you a little bit about intentional communities generally, if you're not familiar with them, and then co-housing, which is a subset of intentional communities. And then I'll talk about how I was thinking about whether or not we should move, and what I was thinking about at that time, how that reflected my values. And then I'll tell you, well, we moved, and what actually happened. Was I right? Was I wrong? How so? And then if I have time, I'll talk a bit about some of my neighbors' experiences and some kind of side quest, I like to think of them, that have come up as a result of having lived in co-housing. What is an intentional community? It's just basically a group of people who've chosen to live together, often on the basis of common values. And there's a bunch of different types of intentional communities. Communes are probably among the most famous, but there's also co-housing or like student co-ops. I realized after putting together this slide deck that convents and monasteries probably also qualify as intentional community, closer to what's in Acts, obviously. And then what is co-housing? Co-housing is a subset of intentional community that combines, you still have your own private home. In some co-housing neighborhoods, such as mine, it's a detached single-family home, like is fairly common throughout the Midwest. In other co-housing, it's like an apartment within a building. But the main difference between that and a normal apartment building is you have many more shared spaces, and the people who live there are intending to live there in community. And in my neighborhood, we have more shared spaces, such as a common house, which is probably similar to clubhouses HOAs have, but used in a different way and built in a little bit different way. And we also have more shared resources, such as we share all our garden tools and yard tools, and we have shared bike storage and a shared fire pit, and shared some woodworking tools. And we also have a guest house where instead of having an extra bedroom in your house, you can send your guests to stay in this little clubhouse to kind of make things more efficient. Not clubhouse, this guest house. So co-housing is among the least intentional of intentional communities, and the only real intention is to have community, as a shared principle. But of course, everyone moves into it with their own motivations. So this is what it looked like before we decided to move in. So not super pretty, right, with a big construction site, dirt, but the homes are starting to look like something, so that's good. And then, why did we move? So I had many different things I was kind of thinking about, and this is roughly the order of importance for me at the time. At the time, I was really thinking a lot about environmental impacts and climate change and what I'm called to do as someone who's living in this privileged position in this country. And I thought I should really try to minimize my environmental impact. And so living in a home that I could kind of design to have a lot of insulation and have less energy cost and pollution effects, and try to have more shared spaces so that I'm having less of an imprint on an environment, having people can obviously have yards in a way that are good for the environment, but many yards are kind of a dead space ecologically, so trying to have a smaller yard and take up less space and less resources. So that was something I was really thinking about at that time. I was also the social aspect of it, I was thinking about this, and it was probably more of a selfish thing than like a values-based thing, in that I grew up in a large family. I really liked being around people. You know, in college, you used to be around people all the time. Then I got to adulthood, and then suddenly you see your coworkers and your family and not many other people unless you really put an effort in. And so it sounded nice to me to kind of be forced and given the opportunity to interact with people just more often and more. I'm not quite ready. We go back here. And so I was thinking about, I guess the aspect that does relate is that I feel like everybody's called to be the best version of themselves by God, and I think being around people helps me be that way. So that was kind of a more personal, value-based thing that made me want to live in co-housing. When moving in, we had just one very young kid, but I was thinking about what kind of environment I wanted them to grow up in, and I wanted my children to have more interaction with more adults and more families and be more comfortable, kind of variety of social contexts than I was as a kid. I was extremely shy as a kid. I was kind of afraid to talk to anybody I didn't know well until I was over 10 years old. And it's like, it'd be nice if my kids had an easier start from that respect. So I thought just by being in this community, they'd have a better personal environment. And then personal growth, I kind of touched on this, but I think everybody's supposed to be the best version of themselves. And as I noted in the common ground values, that we should strive for participation, not for perfection. And I thought that moving into co-housing would kind of push me to grow in certain ways that might be good for me, and if it was really bad for me, I could always leave. So I thought this was worth like trying this experiment of seeing what would happen and see how it goes. And then the last two are kind of just more kind of an efficiency standpoint. Before this, we lived in an older home that needed a lot of upkeep, and so I was already spending time working on it, and I didn't particularly enjoy that, and I thought, this just doesn't feel like a great use of my time and my life. And then I thought that I'd be spending a lot more time in transport, because I used to live quite close to downtown, and we moved right near the South Side Y, so just another mile farther. And I thought, oh, okay, well, this is going to be negative, but there's all these other positives. So we moved, and then it got prettier, which was nice. So you can see there's some homes there, and that's the picnic shelter, and then the white thing in the background is the common house. I guess you can kind of see the guest house way back there near the trees, too. And then there's a nice, pretty picture of the sunset, and we're nearly all full as a community here, so you can see it looks a lot more finished now, and there's a few trees that have been installed since then. Okay, and now what happened? So looking back on this now, I was thinking about the environmental impact. I think was kind of a big motivator for me at the time. And the things I was thinking about were true. It's just thinking about it from another perspective. There's other ways I could have had a similar impact, right? Like not saving a little bit of energy is not nearly as important as taking less international flights, and like thinking about how are you commuting bike versus car, and like there's other things. Or I could have just spent more money on insulation in my current house. Like there's other ways I could have gotten the same impact. So that was kind of a big motivator for me at the time from a values perspective, but I didn't think it actually was really that important. Social, I hope to move into this place and have friends and kind of interact with people more, and I think that's basically true. My community has 20 homes occupied at the moment, and I definitely don't see all the people all the time, but every day I'm seeing, half the people who live there walk by, or I stop and say hi while I'm out about. So I definitely have a more social living environment than I did before. And part of that is, in my old neighborhood, you just don't know who really wants to be your neighbor and who's just trying to be polite, so you're kind of hesitant to get into these longer conversations and stuff. But living in my current neighborhood, everybody who moved there knew they were moving to something called co-housing. So like, regardless of what exactly that meant to them, there's like an assumed friendliness and neighborliness that I think just kind of encourages conversation and encourages you to care more about each other. It's definitely not to the level of what's described in Acts, but it's a little bit closer that direction than the average neighborhood is. And kids end up being I think a bigger benefit than I expected, like the living environment for them. I think everything I've hoped for in terms of my kids being comfortable being around adults and seeing how different people live and just being able to socialize with friends, because there's a bunch of other kids in the neighborhood who are similar age without having to rely on me to drive them somewhere. It's just been it's been better, as much as I hoped for and better than I expected. I coincidentally have I guess you could call him ex-uncle, who lived in co-housing on the other side of the country a couple decades ago, and before we moved in, I asked him how he felt about it, and he said he had mixed feelings because it ended up not being a great fit for him culturally. The people in the community where he lived just had a very different kind of expectations around things than he did, and so he didn't feel like it was a great fit. But he said all the kids, there have been many kids who lived there throughout time, and all the kids who, a lot of kids had grown up and moved away and come back, and he said it seemed like they had a uniformly positive experience. So the adults, sometimes we rub each other the wrong way, but kids like having other kids around and playing and stuff. So I feel like that's kind of been true for us thus far. Personal growth perspective. Yeah, I thought it would push me to grow in some ways, and I think it really has. And I think I'm still kind of figuring out how and what that means, but just being around people a lot you just get exposed to new ideas and new ways of thinking and new emotional habits, I guess is another thing. I didn't touch on this too much before, but living in co-housing community, there's a lot that we do together. So we have some community meals on a roughly weekly basis, and we share maintenance of the yard. So that's we're all arranging who's mowing here, who's planting here, how do we decide about this? The snow shoveling, there's a schedule. This week this person does this, next week this person does that. So there's a lot of kind of common tasks, and how do we upkeep the common house? What are the rules around making sure the dishes are done, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of discussing with other folks and getting used to their perspectives on things. And I think that's kind of caused me to have some growth in understanding other people and being more empathetic with them as well. Time spent on house, I thought I'd save a bunch of time by having a newer home, but it doesn't need a bunch of upkeep. And I have saved time on that. But I realized living in this community, I care about how it works, and so I'm now spending all the time I would have saved instead meeting with my neighbors and discussing these things and organizing and getting along. So overall, I'm not really saving my own time. It's just spent in a more pleasant and more a way that provides more growth, I think. Time spent in transport. I thought I'd lose a bunch of time in transport, but turns out when you have kids, you don't go to the same places. You don't go downtown nearly as often. You go to playgrounds, and there's a lot of playgrounds over there. So I've saved some time, so that's nice. And then the last one, sense of community. I didn't even have that on my list of things I was really thinking about. I think I'd kind of lumped it in with social in my mind previously, but it turns out I now have this different structure in my mind of categories of relationships. There's family, there's friends, and now there's neighbors. And neighbors, I know I used to use the term neighbors, but it didn't really mean the same thing before. Neighbors were people that I lived near and I would know to some degree. But now neighbors means these people that I know on a level that I know everybody in the other 19 homes better than I knew anybody in my last street. And it wasn't because I wasn't really trying. It's just it wasn't built for that. And so now I could tell you more about any individual person in my community than I knew before. And because I've lived there with them for a while, and because we work together, you get to know them in a different way. I think the closest set of relationships that I can compare this to is church, actually. Where when you go to church, you get this sense of care from the people who are there. You're all kind of working towards something together to some degree, and you all care about each other, but you all have your individual lives. And so it feels similar to that. But even the most involved and most smallest and most close-knit churches I've been in, you still only see the people maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times. Whereas in my neighborhood, I'm seeing these people every day. And it's strange, but this morning, I went outside and all the sidewalks were shoveled and salted already, and I knew that's because my neighbors cared about me and cared about each other. And so I sometimes see these people doing these things outside working, and I just have this sense of gratitude that I'm in this community that cares for each other. And I know if anything happened, I could just scream and people will come running and help me. And it's really meaningful to me. So I didn't really know how to, it's hard for me to conceive of that as a possibility, having never really experienced that before, except in church, which is a quite different physical context. But that's been a real blessing. So I have I want to talk a little bit about neighbors' experiences and side quests. Let me think. I basically, with the first two, introverts and extroverts, think about how they had different experiences in the community, and then true believers, and why do these people want to talk to me? I just wanted to kind of represent how there's a real range of people who move into this community, and what does it mean to them, and why are they there? And that's, I feel like, fairly different from Acts, where it's a real intentional community, where it's much more Christ-centered and trying to build the kingdom here on earth. But we can, despite that, we can still kind of make it work and all have a positive experience together. And so that's been a nice thing to find out. And that's kind of related to the side quest here, in that living the community has made me excited about learning about these ways to communicate and get along with other people. And so there's two different things I've been learning about. I learned a lot more about sociocracy, which is it's a governance system, but it's basically how do groups make decisions. And so that it's kind of been shocking to me about how I've lived my life in all these groups making decisions, and now I realize that there's a better way for that to happen. I won't go into that too much at the moment. Nonviolent communication, just about how do you talk about emotional topics nicely, basically. And so those are things I've kind of got excited to learn about from living in co-housing. That's some of the areas of personal growth I've had. But I think I'm at time here, so I'll stop and go to questions and answers.
I have a lot of questions, but for background, I lived at the Bloomington Catholic Worker last year, and at one time almost did an internship at an Anglican convent. So I have some history with intentional communities. But I guess my first question, which is, there's also the Bloomington Cooperative Living organization in town, and when I have looked into Bloomington co-housing, it's very financially prohibitive for a lot of people. And so I guess I wonder why you chose that versus something else, and how you're thinking about how to make intentional communities more accessible from a financial perspective. And then also the BCL, one of the challenges they have is most people who live there are single and younger, and they're trying to be more intentional about ways that they can attract older people and be more intergenerational, and also ways that they can make spaces that are better for families. So they just built a house that has more private apartments rather than everybody renting a room. So yeah, I also wonder how your group is thinking about ways that they attract not just families but also singles there. Yeah.
Sure. So one thing that's different about our co-housing community is that in most co-housing communities, you get a group of people with a vision, and then they build something to that vision, and they collect people with a similar mind, and they all move in together. Ours is a little bit different in that somebody started that, and then it didn't work out, and they got a developer to take over and built it according to what the developer wanted. And so this community is not built the way I would have chosen to build it, and I, right now, as a resident, have power to make do with what's there, but wasn't my vision. And so that's a bit of the financial piece, is it's not how I would have designed it, but it is what it is, and making the best with what we can. And we don't, as a community, own the homes for sale or anything. It's all still privately owned homes, where the developer's selling the original ones, and then if anyone resales. So that's a bit on the financial piece. I wish it was cheaper and more accessible to everybody, but it's not. And in thinking about how does that compare with other intensive communities, like some of the ones you mentioned, I think we were not at a place where we were open to considering something that was more intense or more intentional than co-housing at the time. But now that we've lived here for a while, we've chatted a bit, and I think we were both more likely to move into something more intentional than we are to move to a normal single-family home again after this. And so we were okay, well, we've tried this out, and we see how it works, and we feel more positive about the kind of sacrifices you need to make to live in an intentional community versus the things that you gain. Does that answer your questions?
Does the community as a whole think about where are there gaps in the people who live here, and how can we attract people from those gaps, or is it just
yes,
who's here is here?
we think about it, but we don't have much power. So we've thought about it and talked about it, but there's not a lot of we can do to affect the economics and the people making private decisions to move or not move here. So there's certain things we've done, but I admit they're kind of on the margins because that's just the situation.
Hi, thanks very much for the talk, really interesting. Kind of on that, I'm curious the division or the governance structure and how that separates the private from the shared. Do people commit to, for example, the shared house that you have? It's not just you living in your house and then sharing your tools. There must be some sort of financial commitment or something to the group.
Yeah, so legally we're an HOA. We just operate very differently than most HOAs. So there's an HOA fee that pays for like the common area electricity and the snow plows to clear the parking lot because none of us have that kind of equipment. So there's not really a financial commitment beyond that. But there are the governance structure involves a lot of us making decisions about how the resources are utilized. And so when you move into the community, there's like you're signing to a very basic set of agreements around what that means. And one of those agreements is that we expect people to either work 3 hours a month towards the community or pay a bit extra money because there's work that needs to be done in the community, and it's not fair if everybody does. If some people do all the work and some people do none. But we also say that we're not really closely tracking that, and people can choose to participate how they want. So some people work by doing some of the physical labor of mowing lawns or clearing snow, and some people aren't able to do that, so then they do more of the kind of planning and social event organizing, where other people are like help handle bill pay and things like that. So the expectation is that you'll do something, but it'll fit what fits your lifestyle and your place, and that the amount of work you're doing will change, fluctuate over time. And I realize that's kind of another element that made me think about is that, we live in a capitalist society, and there's kind of rules that everyone understands there. And then in families, the rules are different, right? You're not charging your child to eat food or vice versa or whatever. And then this is kind of an in-between space where we value everybody's labor equally, right? Like you're not getting paid more if you're doing something that people have, in our community, if the people have less, if there's a certain skill that there is less of, you're not getting paid more for doing that work in the community. So it's an interesting kind of economic structure. Does that answer your question? Sure.
Thanks for sharing. It's really cool, to be in a neighborhood or something where you see people, you know what's going on because you see them passing by and challenges. So can you talk a little bit more about the community house or like some God sightings, some favorite moments about what you experience in a community house that you wouldn't get just by having close neighbors in a normal neighborhood?
That's a good question. So in our community house, which we call the common house, we have meals there once a week, and so there's often the way that works is somebody makes the meal, and then other people clean, and then other people just get to enjoy it, and then we kind of take turns. And while that's happening, a lot of the families with kids come, so the kids often go and play in another room, and you often end up getting some of the other adults who aren't related to those children end up getting involved in some way. And so some of my favorite moments have been seeing like my 80-year-old neighbor playing with my kids and getting to know them in a way that is definitely possible in a normal neighborhood, but it's just more challenging. And I think the type of community you can have in a normal neighborhood, it just requires a lot more intentionality and a lot more effort than in a structure where it's kind of everything's physically designed to run into each other much more often. So that I guess that's one of the things. I mentioned this earlier, but like we have a group chat for the neighborhood, and so often, like I'd say almost daily basis, somebody says, "Oh, I need help with X. Can somebody help me?" And one night, somebody locked themselves out of their house, and I ran into them because I was delivering carrots to the other neighbor who was asking for carrots. So like we all, I don't know, it was just like, they're like, oh, so much. I was like, I was already outside on this cold night so we all just kind of help each other out, and feel forced. It just feels really natural, and like we're just all caring for each other, even if the majority of those people I wouldn't necessarily be friends with in everyday life. You know, like they're perfectly nice and I like them. My social circle wouldn't interact, and so I have a lot more 60-year-old friends than I ever did in my life from living in this community.
Any other questions? Oh, back to Ellen.
Thinking about what you were mentioning earlier, I guess in your situation, it sounds like people are in a much better financial situation if they're in your type of intentional housing situation. But how has local resources, government resources, or Bloomington resources, have you noticed changes over the 5 years on how the city has kind of been like rebuilt or structured around you after building that? Because there was nothing there before then, right? It's all brand new as of 5 years ago.
Yeah, there was a home on 3 acres, and now there's 20 homes on 3 acres. So that's changed a bit. We have a lot of people happily walking through our neighborhood on the way to the Y now. Whereas before people, I think, weren't allowed to walk through that property. Maybe they did anyway, I don't know. So the city's changed a bit there. I'm not sure if that really answers your question or not.
Like public transportation, or I'm just curious if, you talked about how transportation needs, parks are nearby. I'm just wondering how you connect with the community, or the Bloomington community may have changed, or if resources from the Bloomington community changed, or you saw it differently after being in that community, whether it's like green city resources. I know like there used to be gardening initiatives. I'm just curious if any of that changed when you moved into that versus how it was when you were downtown.
I think so, but I don't think I have a clear answer to that because it's some individual, and it's hard for me to parse out like what was the influence of moving to that location and being that. Yeah, I have seen some of those changes, but I'm not sure how to parse that out. Although talking about resources, that did remind me. We have a neighborhood compost bin that we all work together on that is aided a little bit by a resource from the city, so that made me think of that.
There's no time for more questions, so I guess we'll thank Alex again.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Let's appreciate him one more time. Yeah, I felt for a moment like you are reflecting of the African context. African context may not be intentional. I don't know what's the converse of intentional. It's by default. It's very communal. But some of the things you've shared are I can relate to them. Thank you very much. I'd like to bring our further reflections in faith action time. How often have we heard the good news of forgiveness and restoration, yet we are still reluctant to believe? God offers us new life, and yet we are afraid to let go of the old. So let us confess our doubts and fears to the one who waits to make us whole. We use a lot of words, gracious God, but do little to turn them into deeds. Instead of being of one heart and soul, we choose sides and form groups of folks just like us. Blessed with great grace, we have trouble sharing it with those who need it the most. Forgive us, God of love, Forgive us as we step out of our shadows into your light. Restore us as we reveal our brokenness. Hear us as we proclaim Jesus Christ as our Lord and our God. Friends, receive the words of pardon. This is the good news we have declared. God leads us out of the shadows to walk in the light of Christ. This is the word we have heard. Our faithful God forgives our sins and raises us to new life.
Thanks be to God. Amen.
Let's join our hearts together in the Lord's Prayer. Emmanuel, you are with us. Holy, holy is your name. Your reign soon come. Your deepest longing soon be done here among us, among all who expect you in hope. Give us each moment of the strength we need to keep us in our waiting. Forgive our sin. Enable us to forgive those who sin against us. Do not test us beyond our power to endure, but in your loving mercy, deliver us through the darkness. For in you is the full coming of all creation, in your holy power and quiet love, forever and ever. Amen.
We are coming to a time this morning of sharing our gifts with each other. And as we do that, I wanted to highlight a ministry that happened last Sunday afternoon after church. We had the opportunity to gather, led by our bilingual East African ministry team, for our multicultural all-church Christmas party. And it was a wonderful time of feasting together on foods from East Africa and Midwest. We learned about each other's culture some more. We sang, we danced, we had Christmas carols, we decorated the tree, we had a visit from Santa Claus, Père Noël, Baba Noel. It was absolutely wonderful. And this doesn't happen without people who give of their time to serve, and it doesn't happen without your gifts. Your gifts helped to support part of this event, and then the other part was brought to us generously by a grant from the General Commission on Religion and Race. And so we thank you for the ways that you give week in and week out that allow us to foster community in our congregation and to learn and grow together. It was a wonderful time, and you can check out social media as well for more of the pictures. We had an absolute blast together, and we're so excited that this has become part of our annual tradition during the Advent season. In a moment, we'll invite you to come forward and to share gifts by placing them here in the basket as the Common Ground Band sings for us. As always, with your financial gifts, you can place them here, or you may give those online. The QR code is on the screen. You can scan that. You can also use our Venmo handle, which is at FUMCB, or you can mail in gifts or drop those off at the church. Some reminders for you. You also have connection cards in the pews in front of you. They're yellow cards. You could take a moment and fill those out and also place them here. On the back of the card, you can share joys and concerns with us. If you prefer the e-connection card, that QR code is also on the screen right now and is available for you to use. Continue to invite others and ask them to join you here. The discipleship hour will continue, and we'll have our last session next Sunday of the bilingual Advent study. So please come at 10:45 if you want to be part of that. We had a wonderful discussion today and hope that you will be part of that next week. Westlake and Vendicle will also be meeting in room 310, and we'll have children and youth in their regular classes. We hope that those of you with young people will come back tonight. It's Parents' Night Out from 4 to 7, so you can drop off your kids and enjoy some time together. And we're looking forward to having them and having some Christmas-themed time this evening. Please make sure you pick up an Advent postcard. They're all around the church. I have a sample of one here, and it will tell you what's happening in our last few weeks together. It will also, importantly, remind you about our Christmas Eve services. And if you look, we have a 5 p.m. Family Christmas service. 7:15 will be in the chapel for communion. At 8 o'clock, we'll have lessons and carols in the sanctuary. And at 11 p.m., we'll have candlelight communion also in the sanctuary. So we're looking forward to that special night. I cannot believe it is just 10 days away. It will be here before we know it, and a beautiful time to welcome the Christ child and to do that with our church family. This is a reminder, and we'll say it again the next few weeks, but on the 28th of December, we will not have Common Ground. We will have one service at 9:30, and then we'll have cocoa and cookies with a hot cocoa bar. It's pretty exciting. In the gathering place afterwards. That week, no Common Ground will resume on January 4th. So make note of that. Every year, unfortunately, there's someone who has a little slip, right? But we're going to do our best to make sure everybody knows no Common Ground on the 28th. I have exciting news to share, and that is that our mortgage payment as a church is now down to $132,000. Glory to God. This payment started as multi-millions, I think around in the 4 million about 25 years ago, and we are so close. It's going to happen in 2026. We're almost there, and then we're going to have an amazing party. So with tons of food and singing and dancing, it is going to be a blast. So please make note of that, and if you can give anything towards year end, we'd greatly appreciate it. And please make sure that as you're giving your year end gifts, that those are either to the church or postmarked December 31st. They need to be in the office by the 30th because the church will be closed on the 31st and the 1st in honor of the new year. So thank you again for all you do. I want to invite the Common Ground Band up to share their gifts with us, and invite you all to stand as you're comfortable and to bring forward your gifts and your connection cards.
Is a habit, hope is a practice, hope is a way to see. With hope we envision, hope we take action, hope is a way to be. With hope we learn how to be. There's always more to see, like roots beneath the tree, like roots beneath the tree. Like the one who brought a pie, though we don't see eye to eye, no, we don't see eye to eye. Hope is a habit, hope is a practice, hope is a way to see. With hope we envision, hope we take action, hope is a way to be. With hope we learn how to be. done. Hope is a habit, hope is a practice, hope is a way to see. With hope we envision, hope we take action, hope is a way to be. We're drawing a circle, drawing it wider, including everyone. Planting a garden, growing connections, knowing the harvest comes. Trusting the harvest comes. Trusting the harvest will come. Trusting the harvest.
You're all a blessing. Thank you, Alex. Beautiful talk. Go in peace. We'll see you next week.